Resurrection member James McGinnis, somebody who, along with Pat and Susan, his mom and dad, know a little bit about difficult and incredibly challenging circumstances. Take a look.
So on September 12th, 2014, James was in his second high school football game as a senior, and the third quarter rolled around and went in for a routine tackle, a play I had seen 1,000 times. And he got up from that play and adjusted his helmet, which I've seen that many times before as well, and started into the next play. And then at some point, when he got to the middle of the field, he collapsed face forward. At that moment, both teams got down on a knee and prayed. It was an acute subdural hematoma. The chance of survival was less than 7%. And it was so serious with James that there's already pressure on the brainstem. The brainstem is what controls, your breathing, your heart rate, and that's how you die from this injury. It was really interesting as the weeks in ICU passed. Susan and I, we would celebrate everything. Like, oh look, his eyes are a quarter of the way open. Yeah. And then maybe a couple days later, oh, now they're halfway open.
And he was trying to come out of his coma, and Pat was on one side and I was on his other side, and we were holding his hands and telling him that we loved him and we're proud of him, and everybody was praying for him. And all of a sudden Pat goes, his hand's moving. And I looked down, and he had done the I love you sign. He just barely moved. It looked just about like this, barely moved his hand. But Pat and I knew what that was. We knew it was the I love you sign. We taught him that when he was a little boy. And he was telling us, number one, that he heard us, number two, that he understood us, and number three, that he was communicating back to us.
Fast forward 9 months later, he said, Dad, did I ever tell you that I had a dream of you and Mom? He's like, no, tell me about it. And verbatim, word for word, he shared that conversation. And I said, James, that was not a dream, that really happened. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I don't remember seeing you and Mom, and I said, well, you didn't open your eyes for another 4 days. And he followed that up with, he goes, well, did I tell you that I met Jesus?
It was really amazing just being able to see your Savior's face, and when you guys see it, you'll understand me. And it was hard, but when he spoke to me, you know what, James, you have more love to share with this world. I mean, you can't say no. So.
It's one of the reasons why you see him running around with the I love you sign, and we've made decals that basically say love one another.
Hey, let me ask you a question. How easy would it be for James to be bitter? How easy. I mean, here he is, almost 5 years ago, a high school senior, outstanding student, great son and brother, an awesome Christian kid, great football player, swimmer. I mean, he's got the world by the tail until a freak accident on the kind of play he'd made 1,000 times changed his life forever after almost leaving him dead. How easy would it be to be obsessed with the unfairness of it all, engulfed in the question of why him? How easy would that be? I wonder in Paul's life, how easy would it have been for him to return to hate and go after the religious leaders he once held company with, who now were enlisting the help of the prevailing empire, who were subjugating them to beat and oppress and imprison Paul? And what about those Christians in Crete, facing the threats of Nero, who was the Roman Empire during the bulk of the New Testament era? I mean, Nero turned killing Christians into a sport of legendary and historical proportions. The Christians Titus was assigned to lead knew that following Jesus could be a fatal decision. Friends, the reality that we don't like, but is a reality nonetheless, is that believing in and living for Jesus does not insulate us from difficult times and difficult journeys that we don't want any part of. It did not exempt Jesus, the one whom we follow. It did not exempt Paul or Titus or the Christians in Crete. God's unconditional love and salvation for James did not exempt James. And God's unconditional love and salvation for us does not exempt any of us from difficult and demanding and at times even devastating circumstances. In this world, says Jesus in John 16, this is a quote, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. We are never exempt from trouble and difficulty, but Jesus has promised, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will be with you always. Grace for today and hope for tomorrow. Or as Paul says in Titus 2, verse 13, no matter what we face, we wait for this blessed hope and glorious appearance of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. I asked James and Pat and Susan, what grace for today and hope for tomorrow means to them. What this blessed hope we read in Titus means. What pressing forward until that time looks like and means for them and how they navigate that. And I want them to have the last word. Here's what they had to say. Listen.
We were going through a memory book, and he saw himself on the field, and I said, you were unconscious and in a coma. And he goes, so was I out for like 5 minutes? And I was like, no, you were out for like 5 days. And his response was not one I expected, but but what he said was, that must have been terrifying for you and Mom. And I think there's something to be learned from that, is that when you're focused on the people around you versus yourself, there's not as much to get upset or worried about. I used to be a destination guy. And what James has taught me is I don't know where the destination is. I don't know when we're going to get there. And so it forces you to enjoy the journey. There are 2 songs that really meant a lot. The first one is a song that I heard when I left the football field. I was trying to follow the ambulance, had K-Love on the radio, and the very first song that came on when I was driving to the emergency room was Praise You in the Storm.
So my message is just for everyone to love one another.
Anyone who's facing adversity, I would say that the number one thing is to not to look back and question what if or shoulda, woulda, coulda. That you can't change the past, and if you go back to that moment and try to, it's like a cancer, it will eat you alive. And I've seen so many marriages break up. I've seen people basically give up because they dwell in the past. And then the other thing is that not to live too far out in the future. Take one day at a time, focus on today, and making it the best day you can. And even if it's a small improvement over what you could do yesterday, that's progress.
There's a song by Danny Goki that's called Hope in Front of Me. And this kind of goes along with what Pat said. You can't look back. You've got to focus on the future. And there's always hope in front of you. And, just remember that God has plans for you. And they're plans for good.
Just seeing our Savior's face defined it for me. When you see it, it was hard to come back, and if he didn't tell me you have more love to give here on this earth, I probably would be up there dancing.